Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's Tanya class, where we are hopefully going to cover chapter 5 of Tanya. But before we do so, Dean's got a question. What's that?
What is 7?
So last week, we ended up with the following conclusion. In chapter 4 of Tanya, we explained, remember what Tanya is doing so far? I'm going to get to your question in a few minutes. It's going to take me a few minutes to get there. Remember that Tanya is really the study of our soul. It's sometimes known as the GPS of the soul. If you don't know what you have under the hood, how are you ever going to be happy? It's that simple. If you don't know what you want, how are you ever going to get it? If you don't know what you don't want, you're going to constantly bump into your problems all the time. Tanya basically is giving us clarity into our identity. Who am I? Now, most of us around this table, and we went through this question a few weeks ago, will have very varied responses to who am I? I'm a vegan, I'm a lawyer, I'm a son, I'm a husband, I'm a Jew. All sorts of different answers about what that is, right? I'm an American, I'm a Democrat, right? Different answers that people will come up with how they identify. But whether you realize it or not, Tanya clarifies to us explicitly and unequivocally that we are made up of a body and a soul. Our body is like a vehicle. It's like our car. It really does not define us. We spend a lot of time worrying about our body and the makeup and the hair and the diet and the doctors, and it's all very important stuff. But that really is not who we truly are. It is our vehicle, and it's important to have a healthy, properly functioning vehicle, but that's not our true identity. Most of us spend almost our entire lives obsessing about our bodies. And how much time do we actually spend worrying about our souls? How many people down PGA Boulevard would recognize their own soul if they bumped into it in the street?
Depends on whether it had a plastic surgery or not.
You know that we've said this before, that the Jewish cemetery has got two conflicting names. Sometimes it's called Beit HaKvarot, the house of graves, which is like the house of death. And sometimes it's called Beis HaChayim, the house of life. The house of life. How interesting. Two totally contradicting names. The same thing. Sometimes it's called the house of death, Beit HaKvarot, the house of graves. And sometimes it's called Beit HaChayim, the house of life. It all depends on who's checking in.
And then there is Beit Olam.
Beit Olam also means the house of eternity, right? It all depends on who's checking in. If a person who's moving into the cemetery is a person who is obsessed with their next meal and their next vacation and their home improvement and their clothing, they were obsessed with their bodies, then for them, this is the end of the road. For that person, this is the end. This is where your body gets checked in and it's all over. There's no more life after this. This is the house of death. But to the person who's a little more enlightened, who is aware of their soul, who realizes that the body is merely a vehicle, a platform that allows their soul expression in this world, such a person will say that the cemetery is not the end of the road. In fact, the cemetery is the house of liberation. It's what will set you free. The cemetery is where the body is no longer tethering my soul to this physical world. My soul can actually go where it truly is most comfortable. Where's that?
With God.
With God. But that's going to take a little explanation.
Yes.
Right? And for that person who understands their soul, who would recognize and cherish and embrace their soul, that person, for them, the cemetery is the house of life and the house of eternity, right? So Tanya is introducing us to our soul. It's really fun stuff because today, chapter 5 concludes the introduction to the godly soul. Chapter 6, 7, and 8 will introduce us to the animal soul. Now that's going to be fascinating. And then 9, the war begins. In chapter 9 through 17, is where we're going to learn about how they encounter each other, which is going to explain to us the schizophrenia that we experience, the split personality that we experience, the conflict and the constant inner battle and the vigil that we're constantly struggling with and validating a lot of our soul struggles, a lot of our anxieties, a lot of our miseries, a lot of our worries, which force us to think that we're absolutely crazy, are going to be validated in chapters 9 through 17. That's going to be really fun stuff. But we have to lay the groundwork. We can't validate the war, the struggle, before we understand who the teams are, right? So, what we explained in chapter last week was like this. We basically laid down the principle like this. We said that the soul, the godly soul, we're only talking about the godly soul right now. We have two souls, godly soul and animal soul. The essence of the godly soul is godly. That's what it is. It's a godly soul. It's a piece of God. That's what it is. But then we said like this, something fascinating. We said that the godly soul is actually made up of two parts: intellect and feeling. Understanding and feeling. There was three parts of understanding: Chachma, Bina, Da'at, idea, understanding, and realization, which collectively stands for Chabad, because Chabad is an intellectual attack on faith. That's what Chabad is. Chabad is, don't do as I say. Do because you understand it. Infuse passion into your Judaism, into your faith, because it makes sense to you. Passionify your faith. Invigorate your faith. Don't do it because that's what your Bubby did. Do it because it makes sense to you. And that's what Chabad Hasidic theology is. That's what Tanya is. It explains to us the reason behind everything. It's incredibly beautiful stuff. Everything starts making sense when you study Chabad. This is what turned me on to Chabad when I was supposed to go to medical school, and I informed my parents. I started learning Tanya. I'm like, this stuff is so beautiful. I feel a calling. I'm drawn. I just love this stuff. I want to teach this. I want to share this. I want to make this my life's calling, because it really spoke to me so deeply. It touched my soul. I was like, I really want to share this with my fellow Jews around the world. They supported me. They supported me. So we said that the soul is made up of 10 attributes. They're called 10 sfirot. You may have heard of that term, 10 sfirot. The word sfirot means...
with an S.
Sfirot, Sephiros, yeah, same thing. It means 10 attributes, 10 modes of expression. In the modern parlance, in the computer, it'd be like 10 windows on Windows, like 10 things to click on, 10 windows, right? 3 of them are intellectual, we said, and 7 of them are emotional. So, how would you recognize your soul? Anger is part of your body, or anger is part of your soul? Soul. Love is soul. Compassion is soul. Understanding, wisdom is soul. Triumph, humility, connection, right? All of that is soul. Those are soul.
Intangible.
They're abstract. They're feelings or understandings. That's the soul. Feelings or understandings, right? Now, when you feel love to someone that you love, that's a soul connection. You don't love. It's not your shoulders loving their shoulders, or your knees loving their knees. Knees don't love. That's not what they do. Knees walk, right? And shoulders swivel. And then eyeballs see, and noses smell. But noses don't feel. Feeling, the heart. What's the heart? It's a muscle. It pumps. The heart pumps.
They always say that love is from the heart.
Okay, so we'll get to that in chapter 9, because the primary seat of the animal soul is in the heart, in the left ventricle, and the primary seat of the godly soul is in the brain, in the right part of the heart. But don't let that confuse you. Don't worry about it. Let's use this example. There's the brain, and then there's the mind. The brain is part of the body. The mind is part of the soul. That's it's like software and hardware, right? You get that? Yeah. Right? Okay, so without getting tzakratz, don't worry about it, nice and simple. Feelings and understandings is soul. Now, if you are feeling love to something, let's talk about God right now, okay? You're your creation. You've been created, right? And here you are, you're a lowly being, you've been created right? And you feel that you've come to a higher consciousness, but you've recognized the existence of your higher power, right? And you've also managed to feel a relationship with that higher power. You feel something. That's fantastic. It's really beautiful. Can you imagine a person who lives without any feelings for another human being? What a tragedy, right?
It's called a sociopath.
Yeah,
That's
tragic.
exactly it. Yeah,
Right?
I was going to say it's
There's
somebody
people
who-
like that, right?
Yeah.
It's like an illness, right? It's a soul illness. Terrible. A sociopath. Interesting. But it's a tragedy. They're not like really alive almost, right? But how many of us, how many human beings are walking around without any relationship with God? We don't even know if God exists. I mean, if you're around this table, you probably have some sort of relationship. But there are a lot of people that don't even believe that God even exists. They think that they've always been here like for eternity. Don't know how, but that's what they think. When you feel that feeling, it's a beautiful feeling. It's like a warm, fuzzy, special feeling that you feel with God. And it's a nice place to be, right? Kabbalah explains that when you love someone else, there's the lover and then there's the lovey. The lover and there's the lovey. And you're actually two separate things. Have you ever loved your hand? You love your hand? You do? You can love your hand.
I love every part of my body.
Amen.
Okay. Well, maybe that's an incorrect terminology that you might be using there, because you can't love yourself. It's kind of like the way it's described, that a king can be a king over subjects, but you can't be a king over your own children. I'm a monarch over my sons and daughters. You can't be a monarch over your own flesh and blood.
In order to love someone else, you have to love yourself.
Okay, fine. So that's what I'm saying with what Gail said. I mean to say that maybe it's not loving yourself as much as it's being comfortable with yourself or being at peace or appreciating. But the term of love is the root, the very root of the word love. Ahava, the word ahava,
Yes.
comes from the root of hav, which means to give, to connect with something separate. When two things that are separate entities come together. So again, Gail, I don't want to get into like the nuance of.
No, I meant from a standpoint of like God gave me these hands, so I
So you're comfortable and you're
God
thankful
gave
and you're
me
grateful, right? But the actual loving, the concept of loving, is something separate of yourself. So when my soul loves God, it's actually separate from God. It's connected through love, through the bridge of love, right? The bridge of love. But it's two separate beings. There's God and there's me, and we're connected through the bridge of love, right? And the same thing goes for understanding as well. When I understand God, right, it's two separate entities that are being connected through the bridge of understanding. And by the same thing goes for a marriage. You know, when a husband loves his wife and vice versa, you can't say that they're one being, right? There's two entities that are coming together in a beautiful union, a matrimonial union, but they are still two separate beings. Mm-hmm. And part of the success of the marriage is being able to respect that, to respect each other's space and feelings and whatever else, right? So what the last week's lesson showed us was that it introduced us to a novel concept. And the novel concept was like this. We said that in addition to the soul having its own understanding and feeling, the soul actually has garments, has clothing, just like a human being expresses itself to the outside world through clothing. You don't walk out in the street naked. You got to wear something. So too, when the soul encounters anything outside of itself, it does so through the garments of the soul. What are the clothing of the soul? Three clothings: thought, speech, and action. Right? Thought, speech, and action are the three clothings of the soul. Now, normally, we would say that the person who's wearing the clothes is more important than the clothing themselves. Right? That's what a person would normally think. The person wearing the clothes is more important than the clothing. Right? You know, when somebody puts a gun, the story of, who's it, John Wayne who said? Somebody put a gun to him and he said, "Your money or your life?" Jack Benny, right? Jack Benny. Your money or your life? So he says, "I said your money or your life." So he says, I'm thinking. Right? When it comes to your money, some people will give their life before their money, right? But, you hear about some of these murder cases. The guy's murdered for a pair of new Nikes, new sneakers. It's like, it happens sometimes. It's tragic. The new iPhone, he killed him for an iPhone. So, in normal cases, the person is more important than the clothing. But when it comes to the soul, it's actually the other way around. The clothing of the soul is able to achieve something that the soul itself cannot. And that is communion with God. Whereas the soul by itself, through its own feeling or its own understanding, is able to comprehend or feel God, which is a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful meditative experience. It's very nice, but it doesn't actually have an intimate relationship with God until it engages in thought, speech, or action. Now, the reason for that is very simple. Because thought, speech, or action is the only ways, the only platforms through which the soul can do a mitzvah. A mitzvah can only be done through an action or a speech. Right? I'm davening with my with my mouth. I am putting up a mezuzah with my hammer and nails.
What about thought?
Thought too. I'm studying Torah with my thought. Right? So all the 613 mitzvahs, 613 commandments, are divided into three categories. The mitzvahs that are done through thought, the mitzvahs done through speech, and the mitzvahs done through action. You cannot do a mitzvah in any other way. You can't say like this. You can't like sit and like just feel a mitzvah. You can't do that. A mitzvah has to be done, spoken, or thought. It cannot be done you can't do a mitzvah in any other way. Without garments. Now, remember we said last week that the greatness of God is His humility. Remember we said last week, the greatness of God is His humility. I'm really summarizing last week right now to get to Dean's question. I always like to do this. In the first half of the class, I sort of summarized it last week, right? So we overlap a little bit. So what did I just say a second ago?
Humility.
The humility of God, the greatness of God is His humility, what does that mean? That as opposed to God sort of distancing Himself from little us, He actually desires a relationship with us. He cares so deeply about us little creations, that what He did is that He condensed Himself or itself in something that we can actually relate to. And that is the meaning of a mitzvah. A mitzvah, we said last week, isn't just an act of obedience, as many people think. And a mitzvah isn't just, one step more than that, isn't just something that connects us to the will of God. A mitzvah is actually God's essence personified. Ohiraisa v'kudsha brichu kula chad. The Torah and the Holy One, blessed be He, are one. God actually condensed its essence into a mitzvah. A mitzvah is an extraordinary gift. It is the gift of infinity. I want you to think about this a moment. Animals, if an animal wants to become godly, can't do it. It doesn't have any mechanism to become godly. And let's talk about a Gentile for a second. A Gentile, for the purposes of this conversation, in the context of what we just said so far, has no way to fulfill the 613 commandments. A Gentile has not been commanded the 613 commandments, and therefore can't. You can do it, you can keep the Shabbos, you can lay tefillin, but it's meaningless because you weren't commanded. Right? So in that sense, this is what it means to be the chosen people. God chose to have a relationship with this group of people to connect with them, to allow them to be one with him. Now, as it happens, he also wants, and that was only in the context of this conversation, right? But as it happens, I have to point this out. The Gentiles also, exactly, God also wants a relationship with them too. He didn't just create them as props, God forbid. He created them for a reason. And God also wants a relationship with them, but it's a different relationship. It's a different relationship. So for the Jews, he gave us 613 mitzvahs. And to the Gentiles, he gave them 7 mitzvahs, which is incredible. 7 mitzvahs is actually, I always say it's easier to be a righteous Gentile than it is to be a righteous Jew. It's so much easier. You get the 7 mitzvahs. It's a beautiful thing where God also wants a relationship with the Gentile, with the non-Jew. Right? You don't have to be a Jew in order to have a relationship with God.
The Noahide laws? Is that what
the 7 Noahide laws. Right? The 7 Noahide laws, by the way, are do not murder, do not commit adultery, do not serve idols, and that's a tough one in a Gentile world, if you think about it. If you think about other religions, and then there's do not steal, don't curse God, don't be cruel to animals, and set up courts of law and justice systems, which is beautiful. These are the 7 Noahide laws, right? So. But I'm not talking about the Gentiles. Let's talk about us for a minute. We have to understand who we are before we can understand who we're not, right? So what a mitzvah is an extraordinary gift. It is the ability to actually capture infinity. This is why we're supposed to feel great joy when it comes to doing a mitzvah. You're going to say, it's Pesach. All right? You're supposed to say, wow, it's Pesach. It's an opportunity to experience God's essence every time that I don't eat bread, every time that I bite into the matzah, every time that I drink those 4 cups of wine, when I bite into the maror, when I sit around the Seder table with my family and I retell the story of the Exodus. At every instant of Passover, I'm doing like 14 mitzvahs, if you think about it. Right? It's extraordinary. And on Purim, you do it in other ways. Right? And on a regular Tuesday, I might be doing it right now through Torah study. Right? Or through the tzitzis that I'm wearing, or the mezuzah that's on my door.
Shabbos candles.
Shabbos candles. King David was once in the shower, and he was deeply distressed when he suddenly realized that he's not doing a mitzvah. He's naked of mitzvahs right now. And you think about it, could you calm down, please? Like, what are you so worried about? You're not doing a mitzvah. What, you need to be praying all the time? Right? You have to be praying all the time? What was he so worried about? And then he realized, he had a bris, and he was like, okay, I'm doing a mitzvah. He remembered that he had a bris, right? So when you realize, now you think of him as some sort of a religious fanatic who has to be like praying every minute of the day, and if he's in the shower or in the bathroom, and he can't be praying, then he's like nervous. He's got some sort of religious OCD or something, But when you realize that what David was realizing, he realized that he had descended into being a mere mortal. Because if I'm not engaged in a mitzvah right at this moment through thought, speech, or action, then I've descended into ordinariness. The moment I'm doing a mitzvah, I have broken out of this world, out of the glass ceiling, and I'm now a piece of infinity. I'm one with God's mitzvah, and God and His mitzvah are one and the same. I'm one with God, right? So that's why when you realize he had a bris, it's like, I'm still infinite right now, right? Because ordinary is just boring, right? We weren't placed in this world in order to be ordinary. We were placed in this world in order to be or lagoyim, a light unto the nations, to illuminate every single thing in this world. What does that mean, to illuminate? It doesn't just mean tikkun olam, which means what people like to say, tikkun olam means just be a good person and help old ladies cross the road. That's not what it means. Tikkun olam means to fix a broken world, to fix an ordinary world and to make it extraordinary. That everything you touch becomes unlimited, becomes infinite, becomes a home, a conduit, a place where God's essence actually is able to reside. Which is why we do mitzvahs with so many physical objects. Every time you take a cow's hide and you tie it to your arm, or on your doorpost, or on a Torah scroll, you've brought God's essence into that cow's hide, or into this building which has a mezuzah, or into my clothing which has tzitzis, or into all of us here and every fiber of our being right now because we're studying Torah, or any other mitzvah that we're doing, the light of the house when we're lighting the Shabbos candles, we're bringing God's essence into the home for the duration of that mitzvah. Yeah.
So what about helping an old lady across the street?
That's a nice mitzvah. That happens to be a mitzvah too. It's a mitzvah of loving your fellow like yourself.
Okay.
Which is okay as well. It's good. It's a mitzvah too. But if you're going to reduce all of Judaism to doing nice things for other people, you've totally missed the boat. You've totally didn't realize what's going on over here, right? And a lot of people want to reduce Judaism to humanism, to being a mensch, right? As long as you're not hurting anybody. Somebody told me a story this week that they went to a temple where the rabbi said, it was like a reform or something. The rabbi said that if you don't keep the Torah and mitzvahs, then you're not a good Jew. So they fired him. They fired the rabbi for saying this. And then when he went to the rabbi emeritus said to him, he was very upset, this guy was telling me the story. It happened many years ago, a few years ago. The rabbi emeritus said to him, don't worry about it, just be a good person and don't hurt anybody, and then you'll be a good Jew. And he felt better. So, I have to watch my words. I have to be careful with when I talk to people about how much information I share with them. I don't blow them out of the ballpark with, Tanya chapter 5. By the way, So I got to be careful. I got to break the news slowly. Thank you. I got to be careful with how I pass over that information. But I gently had to lead the person to understand that a mitzvah is not just a burden.
Exactly.
It's not just a yoke, like put in the back of an ox, because God loves making your life miserable. Right? Because God loves ruining your vacation by not giving you kosher food and having you not being able to take that hike on Shabbos when you're in the, Cusco, Peru. A mitzvah is a gift of infinity where God says, here's my essence, here it is. You want my essence? I've put it in a little cup. And if you can make a blessing, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, shehakol niyeh b'dvaro, borei pri hagafen, if you can do that, then you're grasping all of my essence in this little thing. God's greatness is in his humility, is in his ability to package himself into the tiniest of spaces. And that, by the way, is the nature of infinity. Even though the nature of infinity is a paradox in and of itself. For infinity to have a nature is in and of itself a conflict. But I'm just going to use that term loosely and say that infinity means that it's not limited to being infinite. Infinity can be finite, can be infinite, it can be great, it can be small, because it's infinite. It's not limited to anything. It can do whatever it wants, right? Now, so where this all ended up was like this. We said, therefore, this is the reason we said that the thought, speech, and action, the garments of the soul are greater than the soul itself. Because only through the garments of the soul can I grasp God. I'm just finish the sentence. We're going to finish the sentence. Only through the garments of the soul can I grasp God's essence. What I couldn't do with my soul alone. Because again, my soul alone, wisdom and feeling, cannot do mitzvahs. Right? Cannot do mitzvahs. Only thought, speech, and action, the garments of the soul, can do mitzvahs, which is where God's essence is. And that's what we concluded last week by saying, therefore, that the garments of the soul are more important than the soul itself, because they are the ones that allow us to have a meaningful intimacy with God's essence, whereas without the garments of the soul, it's just me on my own, from a distance, like at arm's length, having a relationship with God, which is not intimate. Okay? And I'm going to, go ahead, Gail.
No, it's fascinating. I just want to make sure I understand. So, when you said before that, the garments are more important, and the inner part of our soul can't connect with God in the way that the garments can, is it because, I'm just trying to grasp this conceptually, is this because the inner part of our soul is God, so you can't connect with something that's already one, and the only part that's separate is God gave us the gift of choice. So when we do a mitzvah, it's a choice. We don't have to do a mitzvah. I could sit in bed all day and do nothing. I have that choice. So does that, and that, like, I guess what defines us as a human being. So I'm just trying to understand, is that why? Because the garments are the only way we can choose to have a relationship versus the soul is already God. Like, it's already, there's
Okay.
nothing to do. I'm just
So,
trying to understand this.
yeah, I know you've been struggling with this particular point for a few weeks already. You've brought it up, right? You brought this particular question because you've been saying to me, you've been saying that the godly soul is already God. So,
Right.
chapter 2 says that, right? It's already God, so what's the problem? Like, why can't you connect, right? That's what you're asking.
Yeah.
So you're already God. Like, what do you need to connect with? So, I'm just going to put it this way, that the godly soul that we have originated in God's essence.
Where?
In God's essence, as we said in chapter 2, and I think you might have missed this particular class, which is why I think you're struggling with it. And what happened was that it went through a process of evolution. The godly soul went through a process of evolution. Much of the example used in chapter 2 was much like the pregnancy, where various organs formulate over 9 months of gestation, right? So at the end of 9 months, there's only one part of the baby that resembles the place where the baby came from, and that was the brain of the parent, because the Kabbalah explains that the seminal drop originates in the brain of the parent, without getting biological right now, right? So only one part of the baby resembles exactly the origin of where it came from, and that's the brain of the baby. But you can't say that the knee or the eye or the elbow resembles. It's descended through 9 months of evolution. And that's why you have different souls within the generation. You have like the Rebbe of the generation, the Mordechai, the Samson, the leader of the generation, the Rebbe of the generation, which is like the brain soul of the generation. That's the soul that has maintained its essence, its godly essence, without having any disguise. And then there's all the rest of us who are groping in the darkness, right? Trying to connect to where we came from, and that's why we need a Rebbe. That's what it says in chapter 2. So we're actually lost. Even though we originated in God's essence, where our godly soul came from, nevertheless, through our descent from God's essence down to this lowly physical world, which is considered the lowest of all worlds, we actually acclimated and identified with each subsequent level to the point that we've forgotten our identity. Do you understand?
Wow.
But a soul can't do mitzvahs, right?
Not on its own, not without the garments of
So
thought,
I
speech, and
still
action.
think she's got a point as far as
I think your
your soul cannot do
explanation was a little
mitzvahs.
convoluted.
So your soul could connect in other ways. It doesn't need to. Maybe
How can
your
it connect
body-
without mitzvahs? Tell me.
I don't know. It can't do mitzvahs.
So the soul can do mitzvahs through thought, speech, and action.
But that's a sidetrack. I think direct to the point, you've said it earlier, the soul is a piece of God, but it's a piece that God put in us, and it gives us. We have a destiny to use that soul
But we
to
have
do
to-
something.
We have to activate it,
Well,
Exactly.
yeah,
It's been a corrupted file.
But we have to
Yeah.
do something.
right?
In order
So
to.
that's why the
yes.
soul, it's not just that, you got the soul, it's God, that's it, end of story. It's that you got a purpose. That soul has to do something. We don't know what that soul has to do, and what your soul and your soul is different things.
That's a good
No.
point. Go ahead. I
No,
want you to finish. Yeah, go ahead.
That's not it. Yeah, you have to do 600, but that's not your destiny. Your destiny is something, which we don't know what it is. And so even though your soul is a piece of God, just like your soul and everybody else's soul is a piece of God, it has a mission. It has to do something. So it's not enough for you to just have it. You have to do something with it. And you do something with it.
So
through the
I just want to comment on what you just said.
Speech
I just want
and
to comment on what you
Yeah,
just said, Andy.
exactly.
Yes.
And I just want to comment on what you just said. Because I like how you put that. That there's being. The soul on its own is being. I think it's a word that you used last week, right? There's a matter of being, which is a beautiful place to be. Presence, power of now. It's nice. But then there's connecting. Connecting with something else. connecting with something higher, more specifically connecting with your actual essence source, that with your godly source, that can only happen through the mechanism in which the source has compressed itself, which happens to be the mitzvah.
It's like a lamp.
It's a what? It's a?
Like a lamp plugging into the...
It's like a lamp plugging... Yeah, exactly.
Source.
Because you know what? Because Hoover Dam decided
Yeah.
that in this socket
Uh-huh.
is where you're going to get electricity. Even though you may want to put the electricity somewhere else, another hole in the wall which is closer, it's not going to work. It's not connected to that hole in the wall.
Right.
Electricity was put into this socket, not into
And
that hole.
got the essence there.
Right.
You
The
just
essence
have
is
to have
there.
the cord
You've got to do the
connect.
cord to connect
Yes,
in, right?
right.
So whilst being is beautiful, it's a nice thing to be, and to remember that I am a piece of God in my earliest origin, even though I've been corrupted through the evolutionary process of reaching this world. Nevertheless, the purpose is not to be. The purpose, what you were saying, is to connect. The purpose is to become infinite, to become one with God. Right? And I'm going to quote a verse that tells us to do this. Remember we said da'at, the third intellectual process. Da'at was becoming one, becoming intimate with the knowledge, right? That's how we explain the third level of intellect in chapter 3. Da et elokei avicha. Be intimate with the God of your fathers. We are commanded to be one with God. Right? And that can only happen through the mechanism of mitzvah or Torah, where God has compressed itself to the point that we can actually connect with it. It doesn't have to be that way. It only was that way because God told us that He did it. Right? But it's an extraordinary gift that He gave us because He loves us. He yearns for a meaningful relationship with little me and little you. And that's why He allowed us the opportunity to connect with Him through the mitzvah and the Torah. Yeah.
So, I can light Shabbos candles by rote. Just get it over with. Or I can really think, what is this about? Connect on a deep level to the meaning of it. That's the mitzvah.
Which one?
The second one.
So you're telling me
Actually.
that when in the conflict of action, of thoughtless action versus passionate action,
Right.
you believe that the latter is more fulfilling
Absolutely.
for you or for the relationship?
Both.
Yeah.
Well, I'll say this.
Yeah.
Corey's right. You're both right. I'll tell you what, you're both right. I'll tell you why. Corey's right because in terms of the connection with God, listen, God put Himself into this little pill. You know, it's like an astronaut. You know, he's eating. This is an 8-course meal right here, right? Whether you realize it's an 8-course meal. I always say to Chanu, we go to a restaurant. You know, I always like to know what's in the food. If I know that there's like truffles in there, it tastes better. You know what I mean? But if I don't know, if I just eat it, and it's like less. It's not mindful eating. I like to have mindful eating. I want to know what I'm eating. You know, when you know this is an aged wine, or if you know that this is like, it took 18 years to make this balsamic vinegar, it's like every bite is more mindful, you know? But then you can just eat it. At the end of the day, it nourishes you just the same, right?
Exactly.
So when it comes to the relationship, you're right that it makes me feel better and you feel better when the act is infused with meaning, purpose, and passion. However, when it comes to the relationship, to the connection with God, it is truly the action, even if it's thoughtless, or the speech. You know, even if you study Torah and you don't understand what you're saying, you've done the mitzvah of Torah study,
Like that,
okay?
not even.
Right? Even if you daven and you don't understand what you're saying, but you're mouthing the
did the
words,
mitzvah.
then you've done the mitzvah. However, I do have to say a disclaimer that in the 30s, chapter 35, 6, and 37, it's going to introduce the unique contribution of passion, of feeling as well. But at least to lay the groundwork right now, we have to be able to say that the purpose of a mitzvah, of the 613 mitzvahs, is the ability for a finite human being, a creation, to become one with the Creator. And that's only possible through the mitzvahs of thought, speech, and action, because that is how you engage a mitzvah. But I want to just add one last thing, leading to the conclusion of the introduction, I'm sorry, is that
We still have to get to heaven.
You know, we had a guest speaker once in South Africa. After 45 minutes of his speech, he said, "And one more thing before I begin."
Because there's so much to say.
So the end of the last chapter is a very interesting concept, which is leading up to everything. It's not off topic; it's connected. It said like this. We said last week that there's an interesting statement in the Talmud which says that one moment of a mitzvah in this world is more precious than all of heaven. Right? And this is leading to your question. So one moment of a mitzvah in this world is more precious than all the life in the world to come in heaven, right? And we were like, that's kind of weird. You know, other religions, they'll do anything to go to heaven, right?
Of course.
You know, they're building a fence around the cemetery because people are dying to get in, right?
That's an old
Yeah. But seriously, in other religions, they glorify death. If you think about it, they glorify death.
Look at the terrorists.
Yeah.
Terrorists, but even in say Christianity, when you see a guy hanging on the wall, he died for whatever, that would be a glorification. They eat, the blood of this and the body of the, there's a glorification of death. Judaism is a profound rejection of death. We'll do anything to live. Break all the Torah and mitzvahs, except for 3, in order to live. V'chai bahem. We're commanded to live with them. Why? Because ground zero is here. It's not there. There is like some sort of a retirement village where you really serve no purpose. You're just sort of hanging around in heaven. We're going to get to heaven in a second, right? Heaven. What is heaven? Right? Here is where we're needed. Right? There you're just sort of suntanning on the beach. You're serving no purpose. We'll explain that, right? But what this leads us to, this statement, is that we realize that it leads us to a question, which is what Dean asked: what is heaven? So what is heaven?
So you said, there it's being, here it's doing.
That's exactly right. There it's being, here it's connecting with infinity. Let's talk about heaven in basic terms. Ready? So what is heaven? Very basic, right? It's not a physical place. It's not a physical place. It's like, where is heaven? Is heaven like on top of Persia or Australia? Like, where is it? Is it on planet Saturn, or is it in this galaxy? Is it another galaxy? It's not a physical place. It's like, where does 1 + 1 = 2? You can't say it's in New Zealand more than it is in Buenos Aires. It's a truth. It's just a concept, right? It's an abstract truth, right? So it's a little difficult for us to relate to that, but just I can say it at least. It's not a physical place. There's no body over there. So there's no virgins, and there's no eating, and there's no drinking. There's none of that, right? Heaven is a place of truth where our deepest essence, our truth, our identity is unmasked. Our soul is disrobed of its body, and it's allowed to bask in the presence of God's revelation. It's a lot like suntanning. Take your clothes off, sit on the beach, and you enjoy the sun's rays.
So our soul goes to heaven.
Yeah, our soul goes to heaven. And every time you have a yortzeit, that soul is elevated. What does it mean as being elevated? What does that even mean? It means...
Closer to God.
Yes. And a soul like Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who's been in heaven for 2,000 years, has experienced over 2,000 elevations. Right? And when someone donates a siddur in the memory of someone else, then every time that siddur is used for a mitzvah, that person experiences an elevation. They're constantly being elevated. How many elevations, how many levels are there in heaven? How many levels? Infinite, because you're reaching infinity, right? You can never finish reaching the ladder of infinity, but the difference is that there you are experiencing in heaven God's revelation, not his essence.
Not his essence.
You're experiencing God's revelation, not God's essence. Like the rays of the sun as opposed to the sun. It's only in this physical world that God has given us this extraordinary opportunity. And it truly is an out of this world opportunity, where within a mitzvah, God has packaged infinity in its essence. Here, this is my essence in a candle. If you light the candle between 5:16 p.m. and 7:14 p.m. on a Friday night with the blessing, you've captured my essence.
Does the soul go right up as soon as you die, or does it hang around here?
Well, there's a process, and I've given a lot of courses about this. If you'd like to hear those courses, it's called Soul Quest. Okay. Ashley can send them to you, where we go through the process, where there's, there's the soul, the way there's the mourning period, with the confusion of the soul, and while we go through the various stages of mourning, in their various levels of intensity, and then the soul eventually goes up to heaven, and then in heaven there it gets judged. And sometimes the soul is sent for a cleansing.
It's like purgatory.
Purgatory. Sometimes, I'm just going to summarize briefly.
Okay.
It's sent for like a cleansing, like a car wash, right? Because you're dirty, like a little laundromat, If you have a stain on your tuxedo, you don't go straight to the wedding. You need to clean the stain, So it goes through this purgatory. We don't believe in eternal hell. We don't believe in eternal damnation. You go only for a very temporary stay in purgatory, and it's considered a great merit to be allowed to go to purgatory, because that is the entrance.
11 months?
Maximum of 12 months, yeah. That's why you say Kaddish only for 11 months,
yeah.
and that's like sort of the antechamber into heaven, because you can't go into heaven. Heaven's like a wedding, you know what I mean? You can't go in there if you're schmutzig. You need to clean up a little bit, but sometimes the soul's not finished its mission in this world, right. And that's where it needs to come back down to this world in a process that's called reincarnation.
Sometimes you feel that someone who has passed is right next to you.
Exactly.
Or you turn around you turn around because you feel the presence of someone who has passed.
Right. Yeah. Okay. And that's a different.
It depends how they die. I study family constellations, and when someone dies unexpectedly, without an illness, if they died in a car accident or a gunshot or something like that, their soul stays here. It lingers because it's still in shock for a year or two.
That's interesting, right?
Yeah.
Rabbi, we always say heaven is above there. We always look up and say, God is up there.
Interesting. Gail, you hear this?
So God doesn't really, where's up there? And purgatory.
We were just talking about that, right?
Purgatory is down there,
Well, we're using that. We're using that. We and I had this conversation about up and down, right? We use that exactly as a figure of speech. Yeah, where do you think heaven is?
Purgatory's in the middle.
Where is 10 plus 2 equal 12? Where is that?
Yeah, a little right.
Is that by near the moon? Or is that near North Dakota?
Is heaven in my mind?
It's a truth. You can't say where and heaven in the same sentence. It's like saying, what color is Beethoven's ninth? What color is it? Is it yellow or is it green? What color is it? It's not a color. You can't apply physical properties to something which is abstract.
Exactly.
You see what I'm saying? So we're using the terms up and down in a figure of speech. Don't forget also, we teach children in an immature way because that's all that they can understand. So we start off teaching them about up and down, and God is there, and whatever. But we do that because we start off. You're not going to start teaching them, okay, kids, God is infinite, okay, and you're finite. You can explain that to a 2-year-old. You know what I mean? So what you do is, the question is, if we mature accordingly, or if we're stuck in the 4-year-old understanding of what God is, right? Which is what I think a lot of atheists are. They just never progressed beyond the 4-year-old perception of God, being very judgmental. Right? And they're still stuck there. And I would say to an atheist, you know what I say to an atheist? I say to them, the God that you don't believe in, I don't believe in either. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right.
The God that you deny, I also deny. I don't believe in that God. Welcome to my God. Let me introduce you. Right? So, heaven is everything but God's essence.
I just want to offer a definition that might be helpful. I agree. I think this is correct. I've heard it that heaven is a state of being, and it's an awareness of our oneness with God. So when we're in heaven, we're aware that we're one with God. It's our state.
Awareness. Okay, so I'm glad you said that. Beyond just a state of being, it's also about a connection of awareness with God, because that God is a critical component of that. Right? But now, how much awareness do you get? Only as much as you toiled in this physical world.
Right.
So, in other words, when you check into heaven, they're like, okay, they'll pull up your sheet, they pull up your report, and they say, okay, you came to 6 Tanya classes, so you're at level 2, right? Or you never opened the book of Tanya in your life. Or they'll say, you spent 6,000 hours meditating on Tanya, on godliness, and therefore you're getting a room on the top floor. You know what I mean? Because it all depends. They only give you as much as you can handle.
Oh.
They don't want to give you, they don't want to shock you. You know, somebody once made fun of Maimonides. Maimonides was a very controversial figure. He lived 850 years ago in Egypt. Very controversial figure. He was one of those figures whose books were burned by Jews. Because they didn't get him. They didn't understand him. They didn't capture his brilliance. And some Jews, not today, but until pretty recently, felt that he was heretical. Because he was so great, he was so much greater than they could possibly fathom, that they thought it was heresy. So, somebody once was making fun of Maimonides. They're talking about a couple hundred years ago. So another rabbi said to him, if you were experiencing the awareness of Maimonides, you wouldn't be able to handle it. And he was like, yeah, try me. And this Kabbalist sort of did something, and he exposed to him the awareness of Maimonides. And the guy fell to the ground, and he started writhing. Because it wasn't anything that he was able to process. And there's a similar story in the Talmud, which tells us about 4 sages in the Talmud who entered the Pardes. The Pardes is the orchard. It's the garden. They experienced a godly revelation. One of them lost his mind. One of them dropped dead. The other one gave up on his faith. And it was only Rabbi Akiva who was nichnas b'shalom v'yatsa b'shalom, who entered in peace and he emerged with peace. Because he obviously had the spiritual vessels to deal with this intense light. But if you're going to chuck a person, take a person off of the golf course at Mirasol and put him in level 14 in heaven, he's going to lose his mind. They can't handle that kind of revelation. They only give you as much as you can handle, right? But once you've got, that's it. Wherever you've reached in heaven, you cannot achieve and progress anymore. You're there.
I thought you could be.
The only way you can grow is if earthlings send you up. Through mitzvahs and kiddushes and yurtzites and kaddishes and whatever.
Send you up.
They elevate you. Elevate your, not up there, but they elevate your awareness, right? They add credit to your account. It's like a guy in jail. He can't make money unless people on the outside put money in his jail account, right? Put money in his jail account, you get more credit at the canteen, right? It's sort of, kind of, right? So therefore, we can now understand, Dean, hopefully a little bit better what heaven is. And we can now appreciate why it is that one moment of a mitzvah observance in this world is so much greater than the entirety of the world to come. Because in the world to come, in all of the world to come, you can't achieve what you could in one instant of a mitzvah in this world. What we're doing right now by studying Torah, what we're doing right now is grasping infinity, grasping God's essence in our minds, in our thought. I'm doing it also through speech, by the way, and all the people that are talking are also doing that through speech. I'm also doing it through action, because you'll notice I'm not stopping to move. My whole body is
You never do.
It's actually an interesting thing, like a candle. I always felt like a candle is constantly swaying.
Yeah.
It's dancing as it senses the presence of something, whatever. A candle, chapter 19 explains, is drawn to its source, which is the rim of fire, the orbit of fire, which is beneath the moon, whatever. But I always feel that when I get into spirituality, spiritual truths, my body starts moving, vibrating, because I sense it. And I'm doing it in thought, speech, and action. So what I'm saying is, what we're doing right now is we're grasping God's essence, infinity, what you could never do, what Maimonides and King David and Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and Hillel the Great and Abraham in heaven cannot do. We can do right here because we did a mitzvah.
And this is one of the beauties, I think, of Judaism. We're just focused on the moment. Never mind be focused on heaven or what happens with when you die or any of that stuff. In fact, part of the parsha that we were talking about the necromancers and not going to those, it's not because they're BS. It's not because they can't. There could be reality to it, but that's not our job. Our job is being right here, doing things with the thought, speech, and action, fulfilling our.
By the way, you'll
destiny,
notice
not focusing on something in the other world.
You'll notice, by the way, that the book that we gave out at the gala,
I've been reading
the title is "Bringing Heaven Down to Earth." Bringing heaven down to earth. That's the title. It's a profound Kabbalistic truth. Don't aspire to heaven. Realize that heaven is actually not heaven the way we know it, but like the best thing, the ultimate place is really here. The only reason that souls go to heaven is, you know why? And this is going to blow your mind. The only reason why souls go to heaven is they're in a waiting room.
storage.
What are they waiting for? No, they're not waiting for incarnation. They're waiting for godliness to be illuminated in this physical world so much to the point of what we call the time of Mashiach. Mashiach, to the point of Mashiach. What happens when Mashiach comes? That's when Isaiah tells us the glory of God will be revealed and all fleshly eyes will see the Word of God. You'll see God in every physical object in this world. And then those souls will not be reincarnated. They will be resurrected. Reincarnated means a soul coming back in a different body. They'll be resurrected back in their own bodies. They'll rise from the grave to be able to live the ultimate existence in this physical world. Because other religions say that this world is just a nuisance until you can get to the real place, which is heaven. We say heaven is just a waiting room until you can get to the real place, which is down here in this physical world, where God wants to connect with us on a deep and meaningful level with His essence.
The soul is reincarnated 50 times. It comes back in 50 bodies.
Maximum of 7.
Oh, really?
Maximum of 7 times. And if you blew your 7th opportunity, then you're in trouble.
Uh-oh.
I'm serious.
Are you in
So the reincarnation.
By the way, we all, Gail, we all are on our 7th run right now. Every one of us here.
How do you know that?
Because we know that ours is the generation in which Mashiach is coming. The Rebbe promised us that ours is the last generation of exile and the first generation of redemption. Mashiach is coming in our times, and this is a different conversation, but I just want to say that biblical prophecies of redemption are coming to be fulfilled in the past 29 years. Biblical prophecies of war and communication and transportation and technology that didn't come true for 2,000 years, came true in the past 29 years. It's pretty clear the Mashiach is coming in our generation. And once that happens, we're on our 7th run. We don't have another opportunity. But to answer your question specifically, if you do come back in 7 times, then your soul will be resurrected in every one of those bodies. And those bodies will be like soul sisters of yours.
So it's a piece of the soul.
Well, my real question was, is it possible that Mashiach can be here for some people who are ready for him and not for everyone? Like
No.
those who just...
No.
It's not
It's actually explicitly discussed that, there was a sage, I forget his name, I think it was the Ruzhin, the Rebbe of Ruzhin, who'd wake up every morning, he would open his window to smell if Mashiach had come yet. And the question was asked, why did he need to open his window? Why can't you just smell in your room? Because within his room, there was the spirit of Mashiach. And you know where else that was? It says in Noah's Ark. When they came out of Noah's Ark, it says Noah had to drive the animals out of the Ark. Why do you have to drive them out of the Ark? Wouldn't you want to get out of that cramped quarters and stretch your legs? The reason why they weren't killing each other in the Ark is because the spirit of Mashiach was present in the Ark. And they didn't want to leave that. But if that spirit is not everywhere, then it's not truly there. It's like pregnancy. It's all or nothing. There's no halfway, right? And I just want to conclude with the beginning of chapter 5.
Yeah, we didn't.
I just want to say this. I just spend a few moments this. Again, if anybody needs to leave, I'm sorry if I'm going a little over time here, but I'm just going to say a few comments on this, because chapter 5 is really, really, really an extension of chapter 4. What chapter 5 is saying is that there's a profound difference between the intimacy formed between the Jew and God's essence when it comes to mitzvahs performed through action and speech versus Torah, which is performed through thought. The essence of the difference is like this, is that when you do a mitzvah through action or speech, then the mitzvah envelops you. God's essence is cloaking you. You know, in this physical world, whenever you take two objects and you make them one, can you give me an example of taking two objects and making them one? Whenever you take it, it's always the smaller object that's sort of like swallowed up inside of the bigger object. But you can never truly say that that each one of them is enveloping the other.
What about when you cook? Like if you take flour and water and you mix them.
Cook is different. Cooking is different. But other than that, you'll see in a second, other than food, leave food aside for a second, okay? So besides the food, when you take like a big thing in what?
Welding.
Okay, welding maybe. There's like a little thing which is being like incorporated into this, the small things being incorporated into the big thing. You can't say that they're enveloping each other. The only time that you can say that two things are enveloping each other is only when it comes to thought. And follow me here. When you have an idea, if I give you an idea, right? A piece of wisdom. Then that piece of wisdom goes into your brain or my brain, right? And my brain, when I'm struggling with that wisdom, as I'm working through that piece, that problem, that solution, as I'm processing it, my brain is enveloping the problem. But eventually the problem is going to envelop my brain to the point that you will not be able to differentiate between the knower and the known. There's no differentiation whatsoever. They become truly one. This is the reason that Torah is called food and mitzvahs are called clothing. Mitzvahs are called clothing. Even in heaven, it says that you're given clothing based upon your mitzvahs. And your food is your Torah. Because just like a piece of clothing surrounds me, but I'm not surrounding the clothing. When I wear a tallis, the tallis surrounds me. I'm not surrounding that tallis. So when I do a mitzvah, God's essence is enveloping and embracing me, but I'm not embracing God's essence. It's only through the mechanism of thought, and the only mitzvah you can really do through thought is Torah study. There, my mind is not only being enveloped by God's essence, by the Torah, but the Torah is also being enveloped by me. And I want to give you a quick example. So think of the Colosseum. Everybody got the Colosseum in your minds? Got the Colosseum? Now, have you embraced the Colosseum? No. Have you really embraced the Colosseum? You haven't really embraced the Colosseum.
No.
You've embraced a picture of the Colosseum, right?
Exactly.
You've embraced a picture of the Colosseum. So you can't really say that, the Colosseum is not in my brain and my brain and the Colosseum are one. That's not really fair. But when it comes to Torah wisdom, because God has infused His essence in the Torah wisdom, therefore, when I think of a piece of Torah, it is not just a picture of God that's being in my mind. It's actually the essence of God that is inside of my mind. Now, this changes everything. Because some people think of Torah as like, why do we need to know this piece of information? Right, like last week's Torah portion. It was all about skin diseases. And you could be like, who wrote this stuff?
Or like, ew.
Why do we need to know? You know, I mean, when you study Jewish law, you're like, well, if a cow charged into a house and the house was next to a boat and the boat got down, you're like, what? Who's even thinking about this? Right? What's going on? How does this even happen? I mean, how likely is it in the history of the world that this ever happened? Right? There's a quick story is the mitzvah of the Rebellious Sun. What's the mitzvah of the Rebellious Sun? It's the most blood-curdling mitzvah. If you have a son who steals a certain amount of meat and drinks a certain amount of wine in a certain period of time, and he's rude, then the parents have to bring him to the court of law, and they have him stoned only if the parents are exactly identical to each other, and their voices are exactly identical and indiscernible from each other. You're like, I mean,
And Rabbi, what does that mean to me in 2019?
exactly, like what is this? Like, I need to learn this? This is like embarrassing stuff. It's archaic. So when we learn Torah, we often think that it's wisdom, but much of it is foolish wisdom. But when we learn Tanya chapter 5, we suddenly realize that Torah is not about getting information. It's not about understanding what you need to do under certain scenarios. In fact, it's irrelevant if it's ever going to happen. Whether this scenario will ever play out or has ever played out is totally irrelevant. All that matters when it comes to the study of Torah is this is God's wisdom. And when you can align your mind with God's wisdom by studying Torah, then what you've done right there and then is captured God's essence, but not just plain captured God's essence. You've done it through thought. In the way where not only does God's essence and the wisdom envelop me, but also I envelop it. It is the greatest intimate union possible known to mankind. Even greater than marital intimacy, even greater than love, where you have two entities, husband and wife, loving each other. This is a union which is so united, it is truly indiscernible. In other words, it is only through Torah study that one, me, plus one, God's essence, equals one.
So it's a mitzvah for you, for me, to understand God's essence.
Yes,
Okay.
of course. But when you understand God's essence, you're creating a union which is unparalleled.
Right.
Right? You got that?
Rabbi, I feel that Torah study is the pill, and Tanya is the water. In other words, if without the Tanya or the Kabbalah thought of the soul, how do you really absorb all the Torah study and get it into your soul?
It's hard.
Yes.
It's very hard.
So the Tanya,
Unless you've got very good obedience and discipline.
Well, it's true, because growing up learning Torah,
Yeah.
but not having time.
You see, that's why they
It's
trained you.
completely different than
Corey,
my
that's why they
learning
trained you in
Torah.
your environment. Corey grew up in a very Orthodox community, which wasn't learning Tanya. And their solution to this was just strong obedience.
Exactly.
Because they were like, look, you won't understand, and you know, guess what? We don't understand it either. But we know it's the truth. And you have to respect them for that. It was their coping mechanism to be able to ensure the continuity of this truth. Not because they were trying to, it wasn't a power
Plus,
play.
It's also based more on faith too, that you do it because God said that you do it, and if you have faith in God, then you follow His mitzvahs. But there wasn't any real explanations or understanding of it. It was just you do it.
Do it by rote.
Yeah, yeah. But it was still meaningful, but nowhere near. This is like a different religion almost,
It's on a
because
different level.
Right.
a different level.
Right. How are we doing so far, everybody? We okay?
So when you talk about leading, the importance of leading a meaningful life, you're talking about that deeper level.
Oh, beautiful. I'm so glad you said it, because this is what I want to say for my closing point. What is a meaningful life? So a humanist or someone who may not believe in God might feel that a meaningful life is a life that is, higher. A higher sense of awareness, a higher sense of being. It's about being spiritual, right? And there's nothing wrong with all of the above. This is all good stuff, right? But you realize life is not just about the next pizza. There's more to life. There's there's the finer things in life. It's like appreciating fine wine over Coca-Cola. It's about appreciating beautiful music over over,
Rat.
yeah, exactly, right. It's about a higher, finer appreciation. But all of the above is ultimately self-centered.
Ultimately
Self-centered. The uniqueness that we've spoken about in the past few sessions is that we've set the fulcrum here is not about me. The fulcrum is about my relationship and my ability to connect with something so much greater than me. That happens even when I'm not so comfortable with the connection. Because it doesn't happen on my terms. Those terms are dictated to me. And I remember that Gail was struggling with this particular point a few weeks ago about terms being dictated to you, right? Right? That was a very interesting conversation that we had. Right. Right, but I hope that this next point might be able to shift your paradigm a little bit to be able to appreciate that. You see, when I'm connecting to a higher power, I can't do it on my terms. If I'm connecting to the office of the President of the United States, I've got to do it on their terms. When the White House wants me to come, that's when I'm going to come. I can't just show up when I want to. It's about connecting and being respectful of the terms and wishes that were set out by the White House, right? So when I'm given the opportunity to connect with an infinite God, I can't say, okay, I'm going to do that when I'm comfortable with it. I'm going to lay tefillin at the Passover Seder at nighttime.
Right.
That's not when the mitzvah is. The mitzvah is to do the tefillin certain times, right? That's when the mitzvah, the essence is to do the mitzvah. So it's a paradigm shift at play here, as opposed to how I feel spiritual and when and where I feel fulfilled, which is certainly the human default. Tanya takes us out of our own skin. It's an out-of-body experience. Tanya says this is not about me. This is about God. And therefore, that is going to have to happen on the terms that God dictates. What that means is, this is not a what's in it for me approach to life, right? It's not what I want, but what I'm needed for. And therefore, I want to remind you, we said, what's the essence of the godly soul? God. Right? In the next chapter, we're going to be introduced to the animal soul. And you know what the essence of the animal soul is?
Self.
Me. The essence of the animal soul is not evil.
No.
It's not bad.
Me-centered.
It's just me-centered.
Yeah.
It's about me. That is the human default setting. For us to be godly is counterintuitive. It takes tremendous courage to break out of what we want to do that which we don't want, because we have a survival instinct.
Exactly.
Right? We want to serve ourselves. Do you know a human being that doesn't serve themselves? I can't even imagine a human being that doesn't serve themselves. That's the next chapter. As we're introduced to the animal soul, we're going to learn that at the very core of the animal soul is the ego, and when we're introduced face to face with the ego, let me tell you, that is an enlightening experience, because you might not recognize the ego when you bump into it in the street either. It is very elusive, very sneaky, very sneaky, right? And therefore, I want to just say in closing, the fact that the relationship that we're forming is with Almighty God, who is, by definition, infinitely greater than we are, only serves to explain why we have a hard time appreciating the mitzvahs in and of themselves. Because you're connecting with something so intensely far from me that it doesn't even make sense that I should appreciate and understand them. This is something so much greater than I. It's not like I'm connecting with my neighbor. My neighbor, me and him are generally in the same kind of playing field, right? If he does something that is completely out of my realm of understanding, then I should get worried. But when an infinite being does something which is completely out of the realm of my understanding, that's good. Because he's infinite and I'm finite, right?
Are we going to have class next Tuesday?
Why not? What's next Tuesday?
It's a few days before Pesach.
Yeah, fine with me.
And what about during Chol Hamoed?
Oh, probably not Chol Hamoed. I'm thinking I'm going to be with my family during
Okay.
Pesach.
Okay, because it'd be very good to talk next week about ego since Pesach.
Pesach is matzah,
Ego
yeah.
and matzah
That'll be
and challah,
perfect.
that'd be
Perfect.
perfect.
Any other questions? Yeah.
Yes, the first year that we did Tanya, and I don't remember which chapter we were talking about.
Yeah.
But it was, we were talking about the unity of Hashem. And that basically following the ego is a form of idolatry.
Yeah.
Is that before this?
Yeah, you're
discussion
way
or after
advanced.
this?
You're in chapter 20 and 21 now.
Well,
I mean, we're only getting to know the toes of the ego, and you're like at the shoulders. You know what I mean? Just hold your horses. We'll get
But
there.
I thought that was at the very
Yeah, any
beginning.
questions?
No, I wanted to tell you it's very good class.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Yes.
Beautiful.